As a true Dominican, I really think we could make it. But as a people, we have to learn to commit. The journey ahead will never be smooth and sweet. But as an ambitious nation, we have to be upbeat. I know we have done it before, so we can do it again. All the pain we've endured, but pride we have to maintain in order to create a better world. Every living soul has to play their role. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong. We got to stamp out the devil, stamp out all evil, jealousy, not by me, certainly. We got to stamp out greediness, stamp out wickedness, jealousy, not by me, certainly. Tomorrow is the first day, the rest of our lives. Let's make tomorrow the first day of the rest of our lives. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make our country strong. Whoa. Change. Whoa. Whoa. I remember the love and unity that we once shared. Starting from the home, the children would be prepared. Goodness was a daily part of our living. This society would be part of our children upbringing. We used to eat everything we grow and grow everything we eat. But smiling faces would glow and the people were real discreet. We need to go back to where we were. Otherwise we'll witness things we never seen before. An opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong. We got to stamp out the ugly, stamp out cruelty, jealousy, not by we, certainly. We got to fight hypocrisy, all conspiracy, jealousy, not by we, certainly. Tomorrow is the first day, the rest of our lives. Let's make tomorrow the first day of the rest of our lives. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make our country strong. Oh, change. Oh,
and opportunity to change things around. Yes, an opportunity to make our country Dominica strong. What a powerful line indeed from this young lady called Joy Stout. She sang this one sometime back, Calypso, in a Calypso competition in Dominica. And so we want to give credit just before we start the program here to Miss Joy Stout for using that song on a number of times now as our opener, as it were, in terms of, you know, this sort of inspiration that we need every time we get into the Civic Vibes program that is aired each and every Sunday from just about 6 o'clock. Folks, it is already 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, and that is where we want to make that start, that all-important start, today being the 8th of December, 2024. And all those of you who are here with us already, thank you very much every time, each and every time that you are here. What we ask of you is that you share that live information, make someone know that the program is on, and they too can participate in that all-important program. This evening, folks, we have another very interesting, informative program with you. And so we're going to look at a very, very important topic for this evening, in that we know in any democracy, in any democratic country, the police, those who are charged with the execution of the law. The police, they have a role to play, a very special duty indeed. Of late in Dominica, we have been hearing a lot of stuff coming from our police department in Dominica. And so we decided at Civic Vibes to have that candid conversation, as it were, with two former senior police officers in the name of Mr. Edincourt Val and also Mr. Nicholas George. So they are here and they will be telling us much more in just a bit as to their role that they played and also the role that any police officer should be playing as we term or classify ourselves as a democracy indeed. So yes, please make yourself very comfortable at this time as we're about to get a very interesting conversation off the ground. And as always, we welcome your comments, your questions when we give you that time by opening up our lines to you. Without saying much more, let me move across to Alvin Thomas so that he can give you guys his opening remarks. Alvin, good evening to you, my brother, and how are thou?
Yes, Lofty, good evening to you, my friend. I'm doing pretty well. Can't complain. It's been a good week, a good weekend, notwithstanding the fact that we are in what you call a fadey zone. Today wasn't too bad, but the last couple of days been pretty cold. But, you know, that's the price you pay until such time you can get some warmth. But I'm happy to be back this Sunday again. And like you said, we're going to have a very interesting conversation, one which I think is worth having. As you said, in a democracy, the police plays a crucial role in upholding the rule of law and at the same time protecting citizens' right and freedom and preventing crime, maintaining public order, and responding to community needs while operating with accountability and transparency. And in so doing, to ensure that the actions align with democratic principles and to respect for individual liberties, essentially serving and protecting the community within the legal framework established by the government. So I'm happy to be part of the conversation. And as you said, we have two esteemed individuals who have served the police force for a number of years. I don't want to guess, but I would say between the two gentlemen, Val and George, I've been looking at close to almost 70 or more years of service. Because I'm sure each of them may have given well over 30 years or more in the police force. So I believe they would have some knowledge, something to share, some wisdom in terms of where the police force is today as we're seeing things unfolding. So yes, it's a pleasure to be back. And I just want to say to our fans who have already locked in, anyone celebrating anniversaries, death in the family, happy anniversary, condolences to anybody mourning. And as we get to the end of the year and into the Christmas season, just want to make sure that everyone stays safe and be well. So I'll sit back and enjoy the conversation, and where possible, ask one or two questions to inform myself and educate myself as well.
All right, Alvin, thank you very, very much indeed, my brother, for your opening salvo here, as it were. Very, very insightful comments here moving forward. Again, all our folks on the live feed, Nerika Thomas, good evening to you, and all of you here, special good evening to you. Please, don't be selfish. Share that live feed. Make someone know that program is on. Folks, we have two very, very special guests among us here this evening in the name of Mr. Edincourt Val and also Mr. Nicholas George. Alvin basically laid the foundation in terms of, their service to Dominica, but we'll be hearing much more from them as to their service rendered to Dominica indeed. Let's open up the baton with Mr. Val, as it were. Mr. Edincourt Val, good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Civic Vibes for the very first time.
Good evening to you, Lofty. Good evening to Mr. Alvin Thomas, and also good evening to my former colleague, Nicholas George, and to the listening public. Everyone who is hearing the sound of my voice on Civic Vibes, a special Sunday evening to you. I hope your weekend was okay. Well, mine was fairly all right. I live in in one eye. It's a bit, if you notice, I have a sweater on. It's a bit chilly. We get in all that fresh breeze, and even the coldness coming down from Pocase, Sylvina hitting us in one eye. So around this time, it gets a little cold. And in a way of introduction, I say I am Edwin Kotsenval. I hail from the village of Layu in the Commonwealth of Dominica. I was born in St. Joseph, though, raised by my paternal grandmother until I was 16. Then I moved to Layu to live with my mother. I attended the St. Joseph Primary School, the Dominica Grammar School, and also for some time the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. I also served at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank as a security officer. My designation there was senior supervisor. I retired from the police force, not voluntary retirement. I was retired in the public interest, political and religious move. So in 1986, 1987, and then from that I have been a civilian since then, and doing my bits to see that things go right in my country. Very concerned with the state of affairs in the country at this time, especially the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force, which I serve so faithfully. So when I see things are happening within the organization, it concerns me a bit. Any police officer listening to me at this time, I want to let them know it is not because I have anything whatsoever against the police. I would support the police on anything they do which is democratic. But when they do things that are not democratic, I must speak out about it and let the people know. So this is my opening remarks. We'll be discussing the role of the police in a democratic society. So later on in the program, you'll hear from me and from my esteemed colleague, Commander George, who I love to call him because I serve under him in the SSU and so on. So very faithfully, I would say, we serve the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force. So listeners to Civic Vibes, this is my opening remarks. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you very, very much indeed, Mr. Senval. Just before we move across to your commander, as you call him, Mr. Nick George, something caught my attention, Mr. Senval, when you were speaking in terms of you're moving away from the force. You said it wasn't voluntary. It wasn't voluntary for political.
No, it wasn't voluntary. It wasn't voluntary.
Can you just expound a little bit, if you don't mind?
In a nutshell, I was retired in the public interest. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was serving in the SSU. I just came from Grenada, and we were undergoing a second phase of training by the 7th Special Forces of Fort Bragg, North Carolina. At that time, I was a member of the Worldwide Church of God. We worship on Saturday. During the first phase of the training, the year before, we were not required to work on Saturdays. So when they called me to train on Saturday, I tell them, look, this is my day of worship. This is the Lord's Sabbath. I'm not working today. So I was retired because of that. I was retired in the public interest, but surprisingly, that happened on a Saturday. And by the time we came back on Monday, Inspector John was the commanding officer at the time. Told me by Senval, that has reached the Prime Minister. And she said, it is political and you should be fired. Anyway, they sent me on vacation. I was in vacation for almost a year, Lofty. And your listeners, and in 1919, what? I can't remember what year, but there was a by-election in St. Joseph. And Patrick John, the late Patrick John Honorable, contested that by-election in St. Joe, and he won. what they called me while I was on vacation to supervise the election in the St. Joseph constituency, from all the constituencies. So around just before 5 o'clock, Mr. Clem John, who was the chief election officer, called me and a representative from the Freedom Party and the Labour Party at the time. There were no United Workers Party on that, so, and told them in my presence that anybody who is in the line before 5 o'clock must vote. At that time, Lofty, bananas were green gold. So the St. Joseph farmers went to their field to harvest their bananas, and then after 3, 4 o'clock, that's the time they started coming to vote. So there was a long line. At 5 o'clock, the people of St. Joseph started making noise that the police station have to close. The police station must close. I said, nothing doing. Everybody that is in the line before 5 o'clock, they have to vote. And so what I did, I placed a uniformed police just at the back of the last person who came in at 5 o'clock. And then Patrick John won the election. The people of St. Joseph, you remember when King David fought Goliath, they had a chant that Saul slew 1,000, but David slew 10,000. So the people of St. Joe come up with a chant, Otrobando se la no pueyo. And I mean, I tell you, maybe that had some effect on the Freedom Party people. The following day, I escorted Mr. Shaden John, who was the returning officer, to the St. Gerard's Hall for the second count of the votes. And then while I was passing by the Tropicraft, at the time, for those who do not know, Tropicraft was a place managed by a lady, some Mrs. Volney, I can't remember her first name, doing all kind of things, straw hats and mats and so on, from local material. She called me, I was in uniform, and she said, officer, can you believe the people from St. Joe voted for that man, although the man had I'm not sure if Patrick John was on bail for that attempted coup. The details are sketchy now. So I said to her, well, the same thing we got discussing tonight, Lofty. It is a democratic process and the people are free to vote for who they want. And she said to me, this is the police that caused him to win, the police that was in charge. He had people voting all after 6, 7 o'clock in the day. So, and then that was it. And from that day, they retired me in the public interest. So I think it really started as a religious thing, but I believe it's because Patrick John won the election in St. Joe, and I was the officer in charge while they retired me in the public interest. And then I took the matter to court, but I was unsuccessful. Basically, in a nutshell, that's what happened.
All right. Well, brother, thank you for, sort of putting the meat on the skeleton bones that you just spoke of. I did not know that, and I know a lot of persons on the live feed may not have known that. So thank you, Brother St. Val, for just, tidying that up for us here. Thank you. Thank you indeed. Looking forward. Commander George, that is the name I just heard. A special good evening to you, sir. How are you?
Good evening to you, Mr. Dura, my colleague, Mr. St. Val, and Mr. Alvin Thomas. I am doing all right, fairly all right at the moment. By way of introduction, I think my name was mentioned more than once, but it's Nicholas George. I served in the police force for 39 and a half years. I joined as part of the Marine unit of the police force. The British government had just donated the government of Dominica a lunch, we used to call it that, Coast Guard lunch, and required recruits to be trained to serve on that boat. So 12 of us were recruited, we were trained in St. Joseph. We graduated and then went to Monbrus, where we did 6 months of training, and then went back to the boat. And I served 39 years, 6 months during my stint in the police force. I rose to the rank of superintendent of police, and I acted deputy chief of police for a short while as well.
Yes, indeed. Very, very, very interesting here. Very good information, Mr. George. Again, we want to thank you for service rendered.
Thank you.
All right. Brother St. Val, how many years did it add up to on your end?
I'm sorry, I missed that. It's only now I miss it. I served for 17 and a half years. So between Mr. George and I, we give 57 years of dedicated service to the Commonwealth of Dominica.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Folks, if you're tuning in at this time, we are talking to two esteemed gentlemen, two former senior police officers indeed, in the name of Mr. Nicholas George and Mr. Edincourt St. Val. They're here discussing the role of the police in Dominica, of course, and also in any democratic country. That is the topic under scrutiny here. So please line up your questions to them. Please ensure that you shoot those questions in the live feed as well. So Alvin and myself will have them answer or respond to your comments, questions, whatever it is that you may want to know from them here this evening. 25 minutes past 6 o'clock. Alvin Thomas, thank you very much. Can you just get the ball rolling as it were?
Yes, certainly, Lofty. Thank you. And thank you again to my friend Nicholas George and Edincourt St. Val for their introduction. And I wasn't too far off the mark when I estimated maybe 60 years. So that's interesting. I think I better go play the lottery tomorrow. All right, Lofty?
You said 70.
But yes, I think we have begun on a very interesting intro as I listen to St. Val and Brother George. But as we speak right now, Lofty, as we're having this program, you may have heard yourself what is happening in Syria, where, you know, the people have said, well, they've had enough of this guy, Assad, and they have decided to do something about it. In democracies like ours, where unlike some of the other islands in the region, where we don't have a military force, we only have a police force. Guyana have their military force. I believe Barbados may have, Trinidad, but we don't have we have the police force. And I remember growing up as a young man, and I'm sure both St. Val and Nicholas could attest to that. There were two persons in your community that you had to, well, I would say three, but outside of the clergy, there were two persons or two professions that you had to respect, was a policeman and a teacher. Those two persons, a policeman and a teacher. And I think we have seen that change over the years. And currently, as we speak, there is so much being said about the police, the role of the police in a democracy. The fact that they don't do things right, the fact that they support a government against the people, the fact that you just heard in the recent issue regarding bail that evidence was not collected as it should. Maybe they could start off by telling us how do they see the role of a police in a democracy? What is their understanding of the police officer in a democracy? And in doing so, they could look at when they started off as a young police officer and maybe what they're seeing today in terms of some parallel. Maybe we can start the conversation there and then zeroing into more specific areas.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Alvin. So basically, guys, the question on the table first up is, what is the role of the police in any democratic country like Dominica? Any one of you guys could get the ball rolling.
Okay. There are two operative words in the question, democracy and police. So I looked up and I got a short definition of democracy, and it says it's a system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. And I'm not going to broaden that. And police, the civil force of a state responsible for the prevention and detection of crime and the maintenance of public order. So before the police, there's the democratic system. So in Dominica, we have a democratic system. Our representatives in parliament are elected by the people, and they attend in parliament. In parliament, they make laws. The constitution also, which established the state of Dominica, is the supreme law of Dominica. It was accepted or passed at the ceremony at the 3rd of November 1978. Now, in that constitution, there's an article that establishes the Police Service Commission. And the Police Service Commission is supposed to be an independent body. We will talk about that a little later if we have time. And in statutory law, the police force is established by the Police Act, Chapter 1401 of the laws of Dominica. And in that law, the command of the force should be under a commissioner of police. The the administration is under a minister. So the minister has administrative responsibilities. So you have the Minister of National Security, and the police force forms part of that ministry. And the daily functioning of the police force is under the command of the Commissioner of Police. And it is very possible that if you note the 4 first letters of both professions, if you want to call it that, or both systems, the police and politics are, the first 4 letters are alike. And that's where it should stop. So in other words, there is a political role for the minister in the administration of the force, but that generally is interpreted as creating, establishing policies. But there's a uniqueness in the police force that policies to be passed, policies that the police must enforce must have the force of law. And I'll explain that. The government could have a policy, a housing scheme policy, and through that policy, the permanent secretary is directed how the houses are going to be distributed. But the police doesn't act like that. The police acts under the provisions of statutory law or the articles of the Constitution. So the minister would not be right to say to the police, I am the administrator of the police force, and I want you to evict somebody from the house. That matter has to go to court. The court must issue an eviction order, and generally it is executed by a belief with the support of the police. So the police is an organization of government, an organ of government established to enhance democracy in a state. In Dominica, it itself is not a democratic organization. All right? Because in the democratic system, you have voting, a voting system that allows for people to vote and choose their representatives. The Commissioner of Police gives directions. They're called orders. And once the orders are considered legal, subordinates are bound to carry them out. So that makes a distinction between what it is the minister can say or direct the police to do. And if it is considered not to be within the ambits of the law, then it creates a problem. Because the police is responsible to the people, through the police, through the government, but primarily through the courts. So when a police officer goes to court, he's expected to give evidence as to what he knows, what unfolded before him. And he should not be expected to be saying that the minister told me, unless the minister himself is a subject of the case and is going to give evidence in the case. So he must give evidence as to what he investigated, what he found out, and what he knows. And the responsibility for his action, he's responsible to the people for his actions in that court of law.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Much food for thought in these comments that you just unleashed here. Mr. Senval, anything you want to put on the table in terms of the question posed prior?
Yes, Lofty.
Yes.
Mr. George has dealt with a lot of things, but I want to speak basically to the role of the police in a democratic society. And I have it under two headings. That two things the police basically has to do is protecting the public and serving the public, the community. But under these two comes certain roles which the police have to perform. Therefore, the police roles are to prevent and combat anything that may threaten the safety of any community. One, investigate crimes. Ensure that offenders are brought to justice. Protection of life and property. And also the prevention and detection of crime. And participate in efforts to address the root cause of those crimes. It's like something like cause and effect. I wonder if the last one I mentioned, whether the police really have anything to do with it. Because as I said, it's something like cause and effect. Something happens, you have the effect. But what is the cause? What caused what happened to happen? So it is the police also has a role to play in that. A gentleman, maybe you have a serial killer, breaking and opening people's house and things like that. He's arrested and brought to justice. But then there should be an inquiry as to what caused that criminal to be acting like that. Like take, for example, another example again, we had the cheaper truckers demonstration just recently. That is the effect, the demonstration. But what caused the demonstration was because the cheaper truckers were demonstrating for their rights to work as Dominicans. Because according to them, they will see there is a good project happening in the country, the building of an international airport, and a lot of foreign trucks are involved. And they, the local truckers, are not getting any work to do. So the police would also have to be involved in what caused them to have that demonstration, and not only taking action like the police do, like the police did, in dispersing the crowd that was gathered, or the tipper truckers. So that is what I have to add to what Mr. George has said. Apart from investigating, protecting, and whatsoever, the police is also supposed to find out what happened, what caused it to happen.
Yes. All right, Mr. George, go ahead. Thank you.
Go ahead, George.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. When I was in service, I put down my thoughts. I actually wrote a pamphlet, Policing the Divisions. Interestingly, I'm going to make a joke about it. Interestingly, I was given command of the Southern Division. I was coming, like you heard Senval said, that I was the commander of the SSU. So that's not the command of general policing. And now I am promoted to be in command of a division. So what do I do with the men and women who are serving in the outstations? They probably know a little more of practical policing than I. So my way of getting to it was to write a pamphlet. So I gave them, I didn't have time to go in a police station to learn. I am now in command. And I just want to read out something that I wrote. Policing is an exciting and rewarding experience. It calls on people who are recruited into the force to sacrifice self for people and country. The profession is also an honorable one and attracts people of sound character and integrity. However, the respect that accompanies a police officer must be earned. Policing is a service to mankind. It calls on those in uniform to prevent crimes against society and to protect property. It carries with it trust, but that trust must be mutually exchanged between officers and civilians. It confers upon police officers the authority of law, but that authority is limited to enforcement, not violation of the law by officers. Within the divisions, every effort will be made to ensure that the ideals of policing are inculcated in the officers serving there. And mechanisms and systems would also be put in place to assist each officer to realize his full potential. Values of honesty, commitment, dedication, and loyalty shall be the hallmarks of all. Officers serving in the divisions must therefore always strive for the best and let their motto be service with pride. Now, that's what I wrote as the introduction to that pamphlet. And I went on to write, explain a number of other things. I always like referring to the preamble of the Constitution because it is that preamble, I think many people sidestep it and we go into provisions and articles of the Constitution that says how you would appoint a president, how does a prime minister get appointed, and so on. But really, in the preamble, that is where you find the essence of democracy. And that preamble pertains to every policeman as well. And it says, whereas the people of Dominica have affirmed that the Commonwealth of Dominica is founded upon principles that acknowledge the supremacy of God, faith in fundamental human rights and freedoms, the position of the family in a society of free men and institutions, the dignity of the human person, and the equal and inalienable rights with which all members of the human family are endowed by their Creator. Respect the principles of social justice and therefore believe that the operation of the economic system should result in so distributing the material resources of the community as to subserve common good, that there should be adequate means of livelihood for all, that labor should not be exploited or forced by economic necessity to operate in inhumane conditions, but there should be the opportunity for advancement on the basis of recognition of merit, ability, and integrity. I want to stop just about here, really. In that second part of the preamble, there's an emphasis on recognition of merit, ability, and integrity. Now, earlier I spoke about the Police Service Commission. The Police Service Commission has the Police Service Commission regulations, and the police force also has regulations. So as a body, the police force is a disciplined force, and it is administered under the provisions of the Act and the regulations. And to date, it's probably the only organization of state that disciplines its officers. When I was a police officer, the discipline was a little tighter, and every Tuesday was assigned as defaulters' day. So every Tuesday, if you were charged for one infraction or the other, you were marched before the commissioner of police, tried, and convicted. And these convictions could lead to you losing your jobs. So the police force has been structured in a manner to serve the people. And in doing that service, delivering that service, it's expected that the civilians must respect the police. But the police is required as well to earn the respect of the civilians and the people. And currently, it is at that point of conflict as to whether the civilians respect the police sufficiently or the police respect the civilians sufficiently and do we have no conflict between the police and the civilians that is causing us to ask the question, what is their role in a democratic country, in a democracy? So there are things that the police must hold dear, and it must go all the way up to the commissioner of police. And I spoke earlier about the four letters, the first letters, P-O-L-I in police and P-O-L-I in politics. It does not give the political directorate the right to ride roughshod over the police or to so discriminate against police officers, to create a conflict that causes them to question the delivery of their duties to the civilians. So in other words, should I be discharging my duties to the benefit or to the pleasure of the political directorate or to the pleasure of the citizenry of the country? And the law requires that we deliver to the citizenry of the country the duties that are enshrined in the law that we must carry out.
Yes, indeed. George, on the heels of you saying that, I need to ask a question here in terms of community policing. What are some of the benefits that can be derived from effective community policing?
Conflict resolution, right there. So Mr. Alvin Thomas spoke about the respect, the esteem with which police were held. Mm-hmm. I want to continue in the present, and I'm saying that the esteem and the respect with which policemen are held in this country. The police is highly regarded and respected in Dominica currently. Community policing allows for community people and the police to meet as a committee.
George, I don't mean to interrupt, but could you repeat what you just said a while ago? You said the police something of respect. Could you repeat that? I want to make sure I hear it carefully. You said the police or something in the, say that again. You said the police force is highly something respected.
I said earlier that there can be a conflict as to the political directorate believing that because the law says that the management of the police force is under the administration of a minister, that might be read as having direct operational control of the police force. And that creates a conflict. It creates a point of conflict, not only in the society, but among police officers as to how I must discharge my duty. And there may be a perception that I must discharge my duty to the pleasure and satisfaction of the political directorate. Or I must do it to the pleasure and the satisfaction of the citizenry. It is the pleasure and satisfaction of the citizenry that is our duty. That's how we must deliver it. Now, when there is a conflict as to which one that an individual policeman or a feeling, a perception, a policy, which one we must follow, it creates a conflict. So if the majority of the force is seemingly performing to please the political directorate, it creates a conflict, and the police loses respect. And why I talked about respect is when you said, well, the police doesn't have respect. That is not my experience, really. I'm saying that the police are respected in Dominica. However, there is conflict as to the level of that respect, and we must research to find out what it is that is causing that. Because the laws that are established, the material that I myself put together in the police force and allows for a disciplined force every year. The force has to be maintained as a disciplined force. because its duties are spelled out in law and not necessarily in policy. If there is policy for the guidance of the police force, generally it must be converted into law. It must go to Parliament, and so that the police can execute it. And as opposed to a permanent secretary, let me get a directive from a cabinet decision written by, on which they are advised by the cabinet secretary, that cabinet has decided so and so. There are, because these are also legal, all right? But there are exceptions, and the police really has to have its duties executed, supported by statutory law, generally.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. George. Basically, I asked the question, and Alvin followed up a while ago, very importantly, because there's this misconception out there by some members of the public that, as you said a while ago, when conflicts arise, especially dealing with the police and the public, there's this sort of tug of war, as it were. The question I asked earlier, it is really so that you guys, you and Mr. Senval, could sort of zero in on some of the benefits of community policing, because it is there, I believe, that some of these conflicts could be resolved. In that, here it is, some of the members of the public, they really are at bay as it relates to the role of the police. So I think it behooves the police now, whatever department, the PR department or the commission, whoever it is, to set up that sort of avenue so that that communication can be back and forth on a constant basis, so that the public could be well informed where you guys are in terms of your duty, and vice versa, so that you don't have this sort of resentment of the police. Some persons are basically scared of the police. Some persons, they curse of the police. Some people, and some of this could be much less if there was this sort of camaraderie where community policing is concerned. That was the point I was trying to from you guys earlier.
The police force, there exists within the police force a community policing plan.
Mm-hmm.
And many efforts were made to establish community policing committees in several communities in Dominica.
Okay.
They functioned in Granby very successfully, the Kalinago territory, Salisbury, Peebush, Calibishi. They existed and functioned. So I fully support the establishment of community policing committees in the communities, because once that is there, the putting together of all the concerns coming from the several communities would help the commissioner of police and the minister and his ministerial staff to come up with policing policies, some of which can be enacted to enhance the relationship between the police and the community. It is essential that that is done, yes.
Okay, fine enough. Mr. Senval, any further comments before we get back to Alvin?
Yes, Lofty. If I may come in here in reference to the question that Alvin asked, I don't know if Mr. George got it. While I agree totally with Mr. George that the public has a lot of respect for the police, but the behavior of the police recently has eroded the trust. I believe that's where Mr. Thomas was going. I don't know if George got it. The behavior of the police recently has eroded the trust that the members of the public had in the police.
You say recently. You say recently. Which activity recently you're referring to?
Like, you mean in recent times?
Oh, in recent times. Okay.
In recent times. Sorry. In recent times. Sorry. Yeah, that's called in recent times. And that police community policing plan came after my time. But what I can say about community policing, it helps bring the members of the public and the police together, because For you to have a successful police force, you are depending on the public. Your success is dependent on members of the public. Like, say, for example, of a crime is committed in one, a crime is committed in Crocron. Even though, regardless of how good a police officer I am, if I don't get the support of the public out there to give me information, certain information, no matter how small that feel it is, and me with my training can put one and two together, certain things which they consider insignificant can be very significant in solving that crime. So I can put two and two together and then come up with a means to solve the crime. With community policing also, the people, the public, they learn to trust the police. So they can come to you and give you certain information and feel satisfied or safe that you will not go into divulge your informant. I have heard certain people call the radio station and said that they give the police certain information, and next thing you know, the information was out there, or the person they told it about come back and tell them in their face, like look, is that the police says you who told me. So that's why I'm saying, because of the action of the police, it has caused the trust of the people in the police has eroded somewhat.
All right, thank you for that input, Senval. Let me see if we could build a little on some of the comments that both yourself and George have made so far. We heard the word trust used. We heard the word the rights of the citizen, respect, service with pride. I mean, we have all of this. And of course, my friend Nicholas George referenced the Constitution. But I'm sure we will agree that the Constitution by itself and not being enforced, I wouldn't want to use the word waste of time. That would not be the right term to use. But with every legislation, if there's no enforcement, the legislation is a waste of time. It has to be enforced by some authority. I wouldn't say body, but some authority. And most of the times, that is the problem we have, where not necessarily we need new legislation, because we have legislation that need to be enforced, but they're not being enforced. So I'm saying so against the background of the referring to the preamble of the Constitution. But in any given situation, we all know, and Lofty can speak to that, Nicholas can speak to that, Senval can speak to that. For a matter to get to, say, the courts, it has to start with the police. That's where it starts. It starts with a crime, it starts with an offense, it starts with a violation of the law, or whatever it is. It starts with the police. And from the police, it moves its way up. It goes to maybe the director of prosecution, it moves to whatever, and they say, yes, there is evidence and all of that. And then it finds itself at the magistrate's court or at the high court all the way up. What we have seen recently in the last several years, and I'm saying so at the same time recognizing that there are very good policemen in the police force as we speak. But there are also some police officers that are doing the bidding of the political administration, the political arm. And I won't even say the bidding of the government, but doing the bidding of, quote unquote, a political party, which happens to be the party in government. And we have seen, for example, persons now before the courts, persons of the opposition party, which, as I said, it starts with the police officer reporting or doing what they need to do on the ground, who felt that those persons broke the law, violated the law. And therefore, they need to be brought before the court. Because that's how they get to the court. A police officer comes and says, here you are at a rally, You are to protest. I saw you do this. You did that. And therefore, I'm being charged here for crime. And it goes through. Obviously, it gets to the point for evidence. And the evidence will either speak for or against. But it starts with the police officer. We saw, for example, in Salisbury, police officers went in there on whoever gave the instructions on 2 occasions on the people of Salisbury. We saw time and time again people are protesting in Roseau and raising their concerns, and police officers would come and behave maybe in a manner that they could have behaved differently. Senval referred to the trucker strike recently. We saw that. We saw in the, not the last election, but in 2019, the government requested the RSU, the regional forces, to come in. One would have thought that if the police were there and the police were overmanned and they need help, you call. But we're seeing those incidents time and time again. And some people have the view that we now have a police state because of the way things are going. I would like you guys to, now that you're on the outside, you were once on the inside, and you know how these things are supposed to operate, you're now on the outside. So you have, I wouldn't say a different perspective, but you can see it from 2 angles now. What needs to be done to earn that trust, to earn that respect, to get back to that democracy that we're talking about, so that all of the nice things you've said about the force St. George, which I believe is true, we, the people outside, the public, will say, you know what, this is a police force we can trust. This is a police force that understands us. So when we go and protest, we don't feel intimidated that a minister will make a phone call whoever he call, and say, hey, disperse them. I don't want that noise here. Send them away, arrest them, and have them now dragged before the courts. I would like you guys to address some of those concerns. And I know some of these may be before the courts, and we don't want to sit here trying to adjudicate the cases. But I think it is at that level in Dominica now. Dominicans feel the police are not with them. The police are against them in support of an administration. So I don't know, any one of you might want to take a bite at the apple. If St. Val want to go first.
All right, just before you ask them to take that bite at the apple in terms of the question on the table, Alvin, it is 7 o'clock and we're going to take that break. So Mr. George, Mr. St. Val, just ponder on the question posed by Brother Alvin.
Yeah, I know I've given a mouthful.
We'll respond.
But I'm sure you got the gist of it.
Yeah, let's take that all-important break at this time. We'll be back in just a bit. This is from Brother Nasir Fontaine. It's 7 o'clock in Dominica and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. We're talking to 2 former senior police officers in the Commonwealth of Dominica. Just in case you're tuning in at this time, the names are Mr. Nicholas George and Mr. Edincourt St. Val. We're taking that midway break at this time. And yes, Brother Nasir Fontaine is talking about police brutality. From mountains right down to the sea, pushing through spots that Lord is police brutality. Yeah. The devil gave the order, police are should have free. Folks, just in case you want to tune in or you want to call into the program, the numbers to call into the program, they're 245-2396 or 615-9470. These 2 numbers are on your screen as we speak. Black Friday, do you remember? Do you remember? Black Tuesday, said I hope. In just a while, we'll touch some of your comments on the live feed. Black Friday. We never fire the bullets, oh no. Oh, we are dying. We never started a fire, oh no, no. No, we are Yes, do you folks remember Black Tuesday? That all-important question from Brother Nasir Fontaine, huh? We are talking about the role of the police in Dominica or in any democratic country. What is the role of the police? Mr. Senval and Mr. George, you're doing just fine, so fine in terms of their responses. But yes, let's get back now to the guest here, Mr. George, Mr. Senval, in terms of the question that Brother Alvin Thomas, or the scenario that Brother Alvin Thomas laid just before we take that break. I don't know which one of you guys would want to take the first now.
I might want to take a shot at it and then George will jump in.
Okay. What Mr. Thomas described falls under two headings: democratic policing and regime policing. Democratic policing is different to regime policing. Democratic policing, regime policing was used in colonial times to protect the rights of a foreign government. And I must say now, it also protects the rights of the local government also. We were talking about colonial times, but I want to add that regime policing also protects the right of the local government. And regime policing is a policy which prioritizes the interests of government and those who support government rather than the interests of the people, which is quite opposite to democratic policing. And what Mr. Thomas mentioned is exactly what we are seeing. We've seen a lot of that presently. That is why the trust of the public has been eroded. The antithesis of democratic policing is like a regime policing. This protects the government rather than the people, controls rather than protects the population. So what we see now happening in several cases is where we have gone back to the colonial days, where we have been regime policing, where as Mr. Thomas said, the minister, any minister can call the police or call the high command of the police and give them directions. And sometimes the direction even comes from somebody who is not a minister, like a lawyer or something happened, and they would call the politician, and then the politician would direct the police. Let me just give you a story. Some years back, while I was still in the police force, Mr. Jojo Karam, who was mayor, a businessman and mayor of Roseau one time, arrested a gentleman. And in the process, they had an altercation, he beat up Jojo and so. But anyway, Jojo got help and he took him to the police station.
Mr. Senval, I don't want to trip you. Your device, can you just kind of adjust it a bit? You are sort of drifting down. Yeah. Yeah, just put it up so we can see more of your torso, your upper torso, please.
Is it
right?
Is it
very well.
Now?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yes. Go right on.
So the Minister of Home Affairs, I believe, call the police and give them the directive to free this gentleman. We know at the time Mr. Karam yielded a lot of power within the Labour Party, even though he was not a minister. And he called the Premier at the time, I think, or Chief Minister. And I cannot use the words he used on the program. But he tell him Well, it's either he say he arrested the guy and the minister ordered that the guy be released. So either he fired the minister or he himself is no longer resigned from the Labour Party and the minister was fired. You think that can happen now? That somebody out there, regardless of how much power he wields, how much influence he has on this present Labour Party, can call the Prime Minister and tell him, look, and Joshua was just a special constable. He was just a special constable. He wasn't even a police. That is, the police could say, look, I did certain things which was within my confines as a police officer, and the minister interfere, you either fire the minister or that cannot happen now. So I am saying I support Thomas Alvin that as a result of those things we see happening, the people has lose confidence in the police. So that's where we need to bring back the concept of the policing, community policing again, that are going to cause the people to trust the police, to realize the police are their friends and not their enemies. I remember someone was telling me back then in the United Kingdom, you know, the police officers would have their heavy coat on them, and, you know, when they patrol in the streets, and you'd see the coat is always bulky. You know what they have in it like that, Lofty? Alvin, candies. Candies, so when they meet the children and the children on the street, they would give the children candies. They pass out the schools, they would give the children candies. So that caused the children to have confidence in the police, to see the police as their friend. And imagine growing up like that from small. By the time they are adults, they don't see the police as enemies, you know. They see the police as their friend, somebody who they can go to and trust. So that is my take on this. So we need to bring back the community policing and do certain things that will cause the members of the police, of the public, sorry, to trust the police once more.
All right, thanks. George, you want to give us your take?
Yeah, I do not disagree with Mr. Senval, but it also speaks to a larger problem in the society. Have we institutionalized unethical behavior? And we're talking at the top, because what happens at the top filters down. Okay? So are we managing, administering without integrity? Are we managing without loyalty to country? Are we managing and administering without respect for the citizens? We must respect ourselves and we must respect the citizens. So if we are not respecting the citizens, then we are inevitably not going to get their respect in return. And the result of that is a deterioration in the enforcement of law. Now, you can also have, and you have in a situation where police officers feel that the action they take is going to perpetuate the government stay in power. But the police can take action that is in effect going to cause the government to fall out of favor and get out of office. So in the middle there is that we must find something that says where it is that the police stand in Dominica in 2024, December 2024. Where should it be? Where has it been past 10 years, 15 years, where it is now, and where we want it to be? Okay? At the moment, there may be service that is in the interest of a political directorate, that is discriminative, that is vengeful, and that is partial. Okay? When that begins to occur, people lose confidence in the police. They lose confidence in the judiciary now, which is an extension, because you spoke about it earlier. The police must investigate a case, take it to the court. When it reaches the court, they are now witnesses before the court, but the judiciary takes it over. Now, in present-day Dominica, we have a problem in the judiciary, which impacts the police work as well. We have a problem. We have a backlog of cases in the judiciary that nobody seems to be addressing, which impacts the quality of the dispensation of justice to a citizenry. So the initial dispensation of justice starts with the police. But if the police is wrong in law, then the other arm that should correct that is the judiciary. Now, so let's take a particular case. How can I think it was in May of this year, the superintendent of prison is reporting that there were people up at the prison on remand for more than 5 years. On remand for more than 5 years, and possibly the preliminary inquiry has been held, or all the depositions and the paper committal issues are done, but that person cannot come to trial. These are things that impact on the quality of work that the police has to do. The police now has to understand what I spoke of earlier, that you are serving the citizenry, and you must clothe yourself in integrity and ethical behavior at all times, even if you are being challenged by a minister of government. Because you cannot go to the judiciary and say that the minister told me to move the crowd. The judge will not, if you do that, a serious judge will want to know which minister that tells you that and call the minister before him or her. You must explain to the court what unfolded before you. So the issue now is one of who are we recruiting in the police force? Because they're coming from the society. How long have the issue of ethics and integrity been under attack? And are we now students or not students, but the customers, we are taking in that. We are consumed with it. We are nurtured in it. And therefore, when we get into either the police service or the public service, we exhibit it. So I wanted to stay around these areas because I didn't want to go into a particular case. All right? I cannot tell you the percentage. I would love to have an assessment done. Again, the police force has been the most inquired into organization in Dominica, public organization in Dominica. And the commissions of inquiry that have been instituted, these commissioners made recommendations for the improvement of the service that the police gives. And in most cases, these have been sidelined. Then you come now to the issue of reward. So that's a cause. If reward was being dispensed justifiably, then it would reduce the dependence of the police on the actions of the political directorate. But if it is not dispensed justifiably or justly, then you have a tendency to go or sway towards the side that is going to make it easy for you. So if you believe that if I do something and it's like a favor to the minister and I'm going to get promoted, then you're going to do that. You're likely to do that. And then you go now to the institution set up to deliver fairness. the Police Service Commission. The construct of the Police Service Commission requires that the commissioners have brought into the commission integrity, ethics, impartiality in their handling of the recommendations that come before them. Are they induced by a political director?
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. George. Very succinct points you are touching on here. Alvin, I know there's much in your tank, Mr. Senval. I know you yourself needs to say something at this time, but I think now is the time we can sort of focus on the live feed in terms of some questions that have been coming here from the many listeners here. Gerald Vital writes, and that is a question that is asking, and Mr. Senval, can you just speak to that, please? He says here, or he asks here, under the Constitution of the State of Dominica and the police force as an institution, is there any due diligence or background check done on would-be or recruited police applicants as to ascertain their past/present socio-psychological and criminal status before joining the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force? What is that recruitment like?
Yes, Lofty. There used to be, and apparently this guy is just reading my mind, because while Nicholas was speaking, I wrote down recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
When I joined the Commonwealth of Police, let me see, before saying that, the police is a product of society, meaning that the police come from the society. So if you take Coach, a bad egg out there, you know he's a bad egg, and you bring him into the police force, it will be very difficult for him to change. As it says, a leopard cannot change its spot. So what I'm saying, when I joined the police force, there was a system. I remember I sat the exam, and Constable, I think he was serving in St. Joseph police station at the time, St. Joseph community, came to tell me I was successful, and then prior to that, he came and make a background check on same police officers, the level of my education, my upbringing, and whatever. And then the same police officer came back and told me that I was successful and I'm to report to police headquarters and such and such. Now we are hearing, and there is no smoke without fire. Anytime you see smoke, there is fire. We are hearing about something called my pal reps and me. They have thrown away that due diligence, that background check into the individual, and then a pal rep would just send somebody, and they send a list to the commissioner of police, and not necessarily the people on the list are the best persons who are qualified to be police officers or to be trained to police officers, but because they are supporting the Labour Party. And I must speak the truth. I remember my friend, I will not call his name, former commissioner of police, because he was on his way out, they sent him a list, and he was summoned to appear before the Minister of National Security. I know who else was there. Because no, when he sent back the list, he crossed out a lot of names. So they called him and tell him, but look, how comes they recommended that that person be recruited? He said, let me tell you all something. I am the commissioner of police, and I should determine who is best fit to join the police force. But as I say, he was on his way out, so he was able to speak the same or voice his opinion. The same thing Mr. George said. If you fear that if you voice your opinion, you will be victimized or something, you will not get promotion and things like that. That's going to affect your performance. So as I said, my friend, because he was living, he was able to flex his muscles, so to speak. So right now we need to go back to the good old days where we recruit the best out there. to be police officers and not those who supporting the present regime.
Yeah, thank you. George, give us an idea of, what goes on into the recruitment process.
Generally, the vacancies are advertised.
Mm-hmm.
But my experience is that young men and women are applying to fill positions in the police force. That sometimes the force would have about 300-400 applications.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't make sense to advertise. Again, you have 300 from which to choose 30, 35, 40. However, the list is when the commissioner is given the authority to recruit, he has to get that. Now that's administrative because it has to be paid for by the state.
So what I'm getting from you, George, not tripping you, because there's like a pool of 300-400 on table, as it were, to choose from. Am I getting from you that these positions are not advertised anymore?
No, I didn't say that.
No, I'm just asking.
No, what I mean is that from my experience is that on a daily basis, you can the young people are applying.
Okay.
All right, and these are a database or a spreadsheet is made of those applications.
Yes.
Right. Now, when the commissioner gets the go-ahead to recruit, then you can go to that spreadsheet and just take 200 from that and you streamline it. And the special branch officers are now tasked with finding out who these applicants are, not necessarily to their knowledge, but they're doing background checks on them. Now, if in doing their background check, they have reduced some, so let us go back to the rest of the applications. If they cannot find a batch of recruits from the applications that were already there, then it could be advertised broadly, but generally you do not see in the newspapers applications are invited from suitable persons to join the police force. And that's one of the reasons, because the force does have many applications that is there. Then the background check is done. So Senval has spoken about that. There are requirements in law. So you must be 18 years of age and not beyond 30 years. And there was a stipulation that you had to have a certain height and certain weight. Now, I believe now...
Based on your memory experience, Mr. George, do you know if any police officer entered the force younger than 18 years of age?
No, I know one officer in my course who joined and he was younger than 18. And it was found out and he was released until he attained the age of 18 and then re-employed.
Okay.
Right, but so you can have a mistake. So he met all the other qualifications to be employed as a policeman, save his age. All right, so when that was discovered, he was not recruited, he was released, and so if it's a month to go, a couple of days to go, then that was allowed. And when he had attained the age of 18, he was recruited. But no, the law does not allow employment of a young person if you are not 18 years of age.
That officer you mentioned a while ago, is that officer still in the force or has retired?
He's retired long time. He's
okay, all right.
Still, yeah, he trained together with me.
Okay, all right, cool.
So yes, so the question was whether there is background check. The answer is yes. When I served as a police officer, I know background checks were being done.
Okay.
And I expect that those checks or background checks are being done today.
True. Andy Matthew is right in here. Community policing, we touched that a number of times for tonight already, should be visible at all time with uniforms and uniforms with different types of vehicles. mobilization to earn the respect of the community and public. That is a comment here. How you guys respond?
But that is we spoke about it earlier.
Yeah.
I think no, there was a struggle in the police force. All right, and a former commissioner Pierre tried to change the name from police force to police service, and he was not successful because the name, the Dominica Police Force, the force connotes that you have to exercise force in the execution of your duty as opposed to service. So Trinidad has the Trinidad Police Service.
Okay.
And the intention there was to accentuate the service as opposed to the force. That you're delivering a service to the community. So the citizens are really customers of that service. Okay? The community policing issue now, there were schools of thought. Some officers do not want to be in community policing, and I think it was probably not explained sufficiently at the time. But Dr. Peter Sejan from Trafalgar, he's teaching in Chicago, he's a professor. He helped, he studied Granby and he wrote a couple books on Dominica and so on. And he studied the Granby situation and helped the police force to craft its community policing plan, which was adopted. Now, so colloquially for us in the police force, some people call that soft shoe policing. All right. So a lot of work had to be done to win police officers to understand that if you are in a village, you're in the community of Maho, and there's a community policing committee in Maho, it means that the community is meeting and they're telling you what it is that is impacting them as a community. Are visitors coming here? Are visitors committing crime? Who's committing crime? What kind of crimes are committed? How fearful are you in reporting to the police? Are you trusting the police and so on? All these issues come up in those meetings. You multiply these issues by the number of communities where you have the police stations, and you begin to see the body of material that can come to the commissioner of police so that he knows now how it is he can shape his management and his administration. So if some of the things that come up needs legislative protocols, then that is sent to the minister that takes it to the attorney general. And some of them are additional policemen or more frequent patrols or whatever it is. So what the gentleman Andy was talking about is to distinguish between a community policing patrol with a distinctive uniform as opposed to the ordinary day-to-day policing uniform.
Okay, thanks.
But that these are policies that can be determined and agreed upon.
Yeah, thanks. Just a final question here to you before Alvin comes in. Mr. George, Mr. Val, Mr. Senval, let us now zero in on our own peculiar situation in Dominica, where, as you alluded to before, the police and the politicians, they're supposed to be some sort of, differentiation. But we know our situation in Dominica. Mr. George, Mr. Senval, Mr. George in particular spoke of the regulations that guide the police as an institution. In those regulations, Mr. George, do you think that, or is there anything in there that would safeguard the institution now from the politicians, whereby they would handpick people who are sympathetic to their political cause, so that the police as an organization now, based on the high command, in terms of these politicians handpicking people who are sympathetic to their political whatever it is, are there any things in the regulations, in the laws, in whatever you mentioned before, to safeguard now the police as an institution from the politicians interfering in them?
It's very simple. Yes, the answer is yes. It's in the Constitution, in the Police Service Commission. The regulation says how you go about selecting police officers and recommending them for promotion, one, and how it is that the commission deliberates. The same thing goes for the Commissioner of Police. The commission has the power under the Constitution to promote and discipline people. But to promote from constable to corporal, they gave that power to the Commissioner of Police. So he must follow the same standards. So the issue that arises, coming out from your question, is the level of integrity one possesses.
Yes.
All right. And your ethics. All right. So therefore, if you consider yourself to be somebody who is ethical in the discharge of your duty and you have impeccable integrity and so on, then you are able, so it's your personality, you are able to resist that. Now, if the commission now is not similarly composed, that is to say, the commission is peopled with individuals who do not have, or who are loyal. I don't want to say that they don't have integrity, but who are overly loyal to the ruling directorate. So they can promote people outside of the requirements of the law. Okay? And to the extent that the commission does that, despite of the constitutional power that they have, an affected officer can request judicial review of the promotion and take them out of the court. And that has happened in Dominica. It happened during my stint in office, that a sergeant felt he had been slighted, he had not been promoted, he had not been properly considered, and he took the matter to court. It went to the court, and the court made that the promotion of the other officer null and void.
That was in what year, may I ask?
Central, you can help me.
But
probably in the 80s.
Okay. I know, no, I'm not disputing that. I'm just trying to see under what administration. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it happened that the promotion was done. All right. The gentleman was promoted to the rank of inspector.
I believe you.
And he wore the uniform. I believe myself that he could take the matter to court himself again because of the shame that was brought on him. He did not sit in the commission's meeting. You get what I'm saying? So the court did something that was right and just, but by having worn the uniform, and he was defrocked, so to speak, through no fault of his. So he was hurt. So I believe then that that matter should have gone to court again on his behalf. But he didn't take it. He just went back to the sergeant's uniform and eventually retired and so on. So again, this is why I spoke earlier about the quality of integrity that we have. And in the nation, what is the quality of integrity we have in the administration and the governance of Dominica? That's an area I think that this particular government seems to be institutionalizing disrespect for integrity and ethical behavior. All right?
So,
once you do that, yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, once you do that, it begins to filter down. Okay, so let us leave the police and take the Electoral Commission, for instance. I mean, look at what they have done. They wrote in 2008 that they're going to do something with the electors list. And they were stopped. The government stopped them. Now it's about, what, almost 7 years that we have a commission there that will do absolutely nothing unless they're directed to do so by the government. That is not what the provision that establishes the commissions say. And in the case of the Electoral Commission, it says, in the discharge of their duty, they shall not be directed by any authority.
Yeah.
The same thing, the same intent holds for the commission. So when the promotions come before the Police Service Commission, they're supposed to follow a set of guidelines. The guidelines are laws. It is in the regulation of the commission. They're supposed to follow that to the best of their abilities. But if they don't, then you have policemen that may be, or public servant that may be promoted because a politician says so. So when he gets into the leadership position now, he feels that he's beholden to the person who he thinks made him a favor. And therefore he starts to act against the principle of policing upon which a police force is established.
Yeah.
So Senval, a question from the feed, based on just coming over from where George stopped, and you'll make a comment, but a question there from one of the viewers on the line. What happens to an officer who disobeys a command they consider against the rule of law and against their conscience? In your response, you might want to respond to that and the comment that you might want to make in light of what Nicholas said a few minutes ago.
Yes, with reference to what George said, he's in a better position to speak to that than I am. And I believe the question Lofty was asking is whether there is any protection for the police organization or the individual police officer who may refuse to carry out a direction from the political directorate. I believe that's what Lofty was asking.
Yes,
but
and that's the question because now
Judge is in a better position to speak to that. And what was the question you asked?
The question is, what happens to officers who disobey a command that they consider against the rule of law and against their conscience?
Well, nothing's supposed to happen to that officer. I say supposed to, because you can only obey a command which is lawful. So if your superior officer or even a minister, politician, give you an order to carry out a certain function, and this function is not lawful, the law says that willful disobedience of a lawful order. So if it's not lawful, nothing should happen to you whatsoever. But we know now as it is, which is the same question Lofty asked, because there is no mechanism to protect that officer or even protect the organization that the political directorate run and work with that. And then, as they say in local parlance, no dog back. That's my response, Alvin.
I know. I know, and it's straightforward. We have I was trying to see if I can pull another question. I had another one that
all right, Alvin, whilst you're looking for that question, let me just ask the guest here a very straight, direct question. Mr. George, Mr. Senval, in your days as a police officer, if you guys' name was mentioned in something that warrants an investigation, a matter of fact, a case or maybe was before the court, what would happen to you? And I'm being very direct now. It is on public record that a police officer still in the force, Mr. Lincoln Corbett, he was basically, well, I guess he will say he was carrying out his duty, but his name is in the center of a melee as it pertains to a case that was lodged in Antigua against him and other perpetrators of kidnap. In your day, Mr. George, in your day, Mr. Simbal, what would have happened to an officer like that, where their name was in the center of an ongoing investigation?
Yes.
Well, it's the nature of the report and who has it.
Mm-hmm.
If the report is in the public domain,
Mm-hmm.
then there's generally nothing that would happen to the officer. But if the report is in the possession of the commissioner of police,
Yes,
or the attorney general, and it is determined on the face of the report that the an officer has committed an offense, disciplinary or criminal, then the police officer can be suspended from office. You're suspended on pay, and if it goes on for a period, half pay, and then you are taken off pay completely. When the matter is resolved, if you win, then you are compensated for all the times that you had not been paid. So disciplinary action was taken against me. Okay, there were allegations against me. I actually was charged before the court. The magistrate read the charges for me, and I had to plead guilty or not guilty, and the matter took its legal course. So I'm talking about my experience. That yes, once the report is lodged with the commissioner, and the commissioner has to discuss, because the commissioner is not in a criminal matter that is going to be taken before the court against a police officer, the commissioner must consult the attorney general. That's the law. Okay, it doesn't mean that police officers cannot be charged. And you know that police officers have been charged in Dominica, and serve terms or fined.
So I understand you emphasize on the point whereby a complaint has to be lodged by either the Attorney General or the Commissioner of Police. But
Not lodged, received.
Received.
Yeah. So if the Commissioner of Police receives a formal complaint, he is, and depending on the rank of the officer, he has to refer that to he must refer it to the Attorney General and to the Police Service Commission, who will appoint somebody to investigate.
Okay. Yeah. When I say lodge, meaning it was from the other party's end. The other party need to lodge that complaint. But okay, I get that. But the question I want to punch at you in terms of follow-up is that what about now the morale of the police force? Let us say that complaint has not been received, as it were. But there's this institution that's supposed to be upholding law and order, and because of some, for want of a better term, individuals who are in the public domain now, there's this aura that is sort of bringing a stain, bringing some sort of cloud hanging over the police force. Do you still think that the high command of the police force should act in protecting the institution?
Yes, but the action that the high command can take is to recommend the suspension of the police officer against whom the complaint is made. And then an investigation is instituted. Now, as to the morale, yes, it will have an impact on the morale of the police force. But the question is, if the rank of the person is their authority affected by the report that he doesn't have before him, he's not informed formally of it. If he gives instructions, then the subordinates must carry it. But it can have a serious effect on morale, especially if it is applied discriminatively. So you have one set of people who are protected, so to speak, and nothing is done if there are allegations against them. But if an allegation is done against another officer, then all the procedures are thrown at him. But the law allows for the investigation of reports and complaints against the police, and these are dealt with disciplinarily. Tribunals are appointed by the commission or the commissioner of police to deal with and hear the matter, and the reports the person who is accused is entitled to defend himself. He can get a member of his association.
Your audio just got cracked up. I don't know why. No. We are just hearing you sort of much more feed. All right, maybe your internet is giving issues. But Mr. Senval, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yes,
I don't know what, are you seeing me?
No, I'm not seeing you, but we're hearing you.
I don't know what I did, but where I used to see my photo, my initial just come up there, E. So I don't know if it's something I touched, so I no longer see my photo. But anyway, what Nicholas is saying, in order for the commissioner or the police to act, a report has to be made. And then he get directives from the Attorney General or the Director of Public Prosecution. But before going further, Lofty, let me commend you for your service to your country. And especially that matter you talk about where a certain police officer was allegedly involved in kidnapping, and a top-ranking police officer that the apparatus of the state was used. The Coast Guard police vehicle was used, and that nothing happened. That police officer is still serving. As you said, it must affect the morale of the police force. It's going to bring disrespect to that certain police officer. And I believe in a democratic society, quote unquote, we're talking about democracy, a report would have been made to the commissioner of police, and that police officer would have been suspended, as Mr. Judge says, sometime
by the way, Mr. Senval, that report would have to be brought in or sent in by whom, so that the commissioner high command could be able to receive it? By whom?
I'm not sure. I guess maybe a member of the public can make a report, or if he's an official like the Attorney General or something. I'm really not certain. I would ask Mr. George to comment on that. But as something of that magnitude, Lofty, where even the police officer in question is facing a lawsuit by the individual that was allegedly kidnapped. How can you have such a person still serving in the police force as though nothing happened? That must affect the morale of your police force. And that isn't good for policing at all in a democratic society. Now I would yield to Judge, see if he can bring clarity to as to who supposed to make that report.
Yeah, if you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. In the particular instance that you're talking about, if evidence is unearthed in Antigua, for instance, in a criminal matter that the police in Antigua are investigating, and it implicates Dominicans, then the Commissioner of Police in Antigua and the Attorney General can both submit that report to the Minister of National Security and the Commissioner of Police. The Commissioner of Police would have to get guidance from the Attorney General and probably the Director of Public Prosecution as to what to do with the case. He would have to investigate if it is not a complete investigation. If a complete file is just a report, so he has to investigate, create a file, and take that file first to the Attorney General. And then he can recommend that in the circumstances, what is unfolded before him, he recommend the suspension of the officer. If the officer is higher than the rank of corporal, the suspension must come. The recommendation must go to the Police Service Commission, and the Police Service Commission would now act on the recommendation. Commissioner cannot suspend an inspector, so to speak, because disciplinary control is handled by the commission over inspectors, well, from superintendents down. So if it is the Deputy Commissioner of Police and the Commissioner of Police, that might have to go to the President, because the President appoints the Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner of Police on the advice of the Prime Minister. So the Attorney General would have to file that and send that report with his recommendations to the President, asking for a tribunal to be appointed to investigate and to prosecute the matter where necessary. And a recommendation say that in the interim, the officer in question be suspended with pay, half pay, or no pay. And at the determination of the matter, if the officer wins the case, then he's reinstated and he's paid all what he had not been paid.
All right, guys, thanks for attempting to clear up that scenario, but I think it needs some sort of further exploration in that department, because based on what you said, Mr. George, I agree with what you said in terms of the Commissioner of Police or whoever investigating the matter from Antigua's end. Once there's evidence, should file that report and then the necessary actions take place here. But based on what I know in that matter, then it is sort of, I am saying now, suppression in Dominica, suppression in Antigua. So some other avenues will have to, come to light to sort of bring that matter in terms of reporting and getting it into the hands of those who matter here.
I want to make a comment there. We've been talking whole night about policing in a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to make the point repeatedly that the police and the citizenry must work together, hand in hand.
Yes.
Right? And therefore, if the citizenry is not pleased, it is the citizenry that establishes the democracy. So it's the citizenry that decides what it takes and what it doesn't take. So, no, I'm not hearing.
Alvin, you're muted.
No, I was saying, Nicholas, I'm glad you made that comment, because somebody on the feed asked that question. They said, Ferdinand Lawrence says, what is the role of citizens when the police, whose duty is to protect them, are now seen as the enemy of the citizens? That was his question. Right. And you're going right to that now.
Yeah, so the foundation of democracy is the involvement of the people. It is the people that establish the democratic system. They did that in the preamble. And they elect the representatives. They go to parliament at the behest of the citizenry, the society. And if they are not satisfied with the delivery of service to them, then they have to make their voice heard from the different organs of society. Yes, you're going to...
So let me push back on that. I hate to do that, but I'm going to push back.
And bearing in mind, Alvin, we just have 3 minutes wind down time. Huh?
But the citizens now protest. They come out and they say, for example, you cited the electoral reform. They come outside the electoral office with their placard. We want our reform, whatever. The police comes in and drive them away.
You get tear gas
them away. How do they do that, the citizens? That's the question, because they are coming peacefully with their placard. The police will say, oh, you didn't get permission. Maybe, or maybe yes, maybe not. Or they may write for permission, they may not get it. They feel, boy, we have to have our voice heard. But when they try to make their voice heard, just what you're saying, they are faced with the barrage of some of the police that seem not to understand the law and the right of citizens to protest.
Right. So then there is what you call dedication and commitment to the cause by the citizenry, and the requirement to remove those that they put over them to establish the democracy. It means that what they sought to establish in their constitution is being violated. Their constitutional right is being violated, and therefore they must take action to reinstate their constitutional right by removing. Remember, democracy requires the establishment of the intentions of the citizenry, the majority, and it is exercised through the representatives. It is the representatives that go to parliament and pass law, and then we abide by it. If the laws are offensive to us, we take it to court. If the court is not giving us justice, then we go back to the establishment of the democratic system, and we take it back.
Indeed. What a way to sort of...
It can be violent. It can be violent, but the one question can be, what is the threshold? What is the threshold would the police or the political directorate use before they listen to the citizenry? Does it mean injury to certain people, death, how many dead, damage to property, how much damage, so as to make sure that they make the people subservient to their dictates?
Mr. George, Mr. Senval, would you guys, give your public, give any public promise here that you guys will be back for round 2? Because I'm sensing there's much more that can be discussed.
Oh yeah, we've just touched the tip of the iceberg.
Because it's 8 o'clock and we have to go.
I agree with Alvin, because there's so much more to be said, and 2 hours, the 2 hours run by so fast that you even realize it's 2 hours. But before promising to come back, I want to respond to something that Alvin said. We have been talking about the role of the police in a democratic society. When you see all those things we have mentioned, is not happening, what it leads to is a police state. And in a police state is where the government uses the police or the military to control its citizens and limit their rights and freedoms. As Alvin said, you demonstrating, and the police come, they tear gas you, and then you have to, what the people have to do now is to realize the powers lies in their hand. They shut down the country. But more when we come back, Lofty.
Yes, indeed. When we come back, indeed. Folks, it is 8 o'clock. A matter of fact, it is a minute past 8, so we have to go now around the table, figuratively speaking, and sort of get everyone's wrap-up comments. And then these guys, they promise they'll be back, so we hold them to their promise. Mr. Senval, can you just give us your closing or parting comments, please? Mr. Senval.
Sorry, Lofty, my mic was muted.
Yes, go ahead.
In a nutshell, my closing comments would be the comments I have made anytime I have to address the police, whether it's in public or whatever, that power is transitory. Politician, nobody is in power forever. Methuselah lives 969 years, but he still died. So your loyalty is to the state, to the people, Your loyalty, you are responsible to protect the people and not any politician, not any group of persons who are supporting the politicians. That's closing remarks.
Closing remarks. Thank you. Short and sweet. Thank you, Mr. Senval, for making time for us tonight and the listening public. Do enjoy what is left of your rest of your evening, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Lofty.
All right. Mr. George. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome, Senval.
Yes, I agree with Senval's closing remarks, I would just say that the police has a responsibility to understand where their duty lies, under law and under conscience. The political directorate has to understand where the power comes from. It comes from the citizens. So therefore, they must at all times do what they're doing in the name and on the behalf and for the citizenry. And anytime they go in against that, the citizenry has the right to take back their power. And power, he used an analogy a while ago. I was once a superintendent, now I'm retired. And that proves how transitory power is. So even if I didn't have power, I had leadership, I had authority, and now I am retired. So every other police officer will be retired and every other politician will be retired. It's your legacy that counts.
True.
Thank you very much. And good night.
Thank you. And as Mr. Alvin Thomas started earlier, Mr. George, when you say power is indeed transitory, maybe last week, well, not maybe, last week, Bashar al-Assad was in power. Tonight, he's a man on the run. So yes, it is indeed transitory.
Yeah, that's true.
No, absolutely.
Mr. Thomas.
Well,
Yes,
let
sir.
me just again, like Lofty, thank both you gentlemen, Nicholas and George and Edin Kotsetval for being our guests on this program tonight. Seriously though, I think we have just touched the surface because I think there's a lot more that needs to be discussed as it relates to policing in Dominica. We all know of several incidents that have occurred over the years that seems to give a bad impression of the force. And we don't want to get down the road where it becomes now a police versus the people or the people versus the police. And that is where it may lead to. Just a couple of weeks ago in Bahamas, a senior police officer was apprehended in the US and created a hell of a stir. And the chief of police, if I'll share the recording with you, both you gentlemen, put in extensive investigations and measures in place as it relates to that. Sometime last year, I think it was, the police arrested in Trinidad a minister of government and his wife on some alleged crime that was committed. A sitting minister, I'm telling you, and his wife were arrested in Trinidad on alleged crime. Can we ever see something like that in Dominica?
Yes, we can.
So, okay, all right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. But I just want to end by saying you guys did a great job, a lot of information, great conversation. But I think we need to continue having that conversation because I think it is relevant, it's important in any democracy, and for a democracy to grow and flourish, like you say, the people must take charge.
If I say the government in my land don't care for the local man, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say my green Dominica has been bequeathed to...
All right, folks, that is it. That is where we must wind down the curtains or bring the curtains down on things here.
Simple truth.
And we end with this one from King Dice. 10 times the monarch in Dominica wanted.
Wanted man. Wanted for speaking truth. Wanted for caring about the youth. Wanted for wanting.
So to Mr. Nicholas George and Mr. Edin Kotsetval, our guests for tonight, thank you very, very much indeed, guys. A splendid job done.
And to be a yes man to a godless, corrupt politician.
So all of you locked in earlier, good evening to you. To those of you much further afield, it may be good morning already. Whatever time of day it is, greetings and bye-bye. That is it for us till next week. Well, not next week, huh? I for sure will not be with you guys next week. I'll be attending this much talked about, much anticipated Delegates Conference of the United Workers' Party next week Sunday, if the good Lord above bears me out.
Never before have we ever seen a little money make Jumbie dance.
So Alvin and I will rap in the back. Let's see if he will hold the fort, huh?
Parents treading the future.
Well, thank you for your eyes each and every time.
Fortune spent to persecute the innocent. Elimination of opposition and foreign investment. That's politics in this time. If I say law enforcement is blind.
And yes, to all of you tuned in, thank you very much for your eyes and your ears. Go spread the word from Civic Vibes. It's a good vibe, huh?
Are afraid of.
So to the Civic Vibes team that do the very hardest work in the back, thank you guys. Thank you very, very much.
That one man fools most of the people all the time. I'm a wanted man.
One more verse of King Dice, and yes, we are out, Alvin and I. Thank you.
Wanted for speaking truth, wanted for caring about the youth, wanted for wanting fairness in my life. So out much rather be a wanted man and keep my soul free from the soul snatcher's hands. I You see, one man is an easy target, but I'm just one of my brothers who they don't know. Seeds of righteousness, when they're buried, they don't die, they just grow and grow. They taught us when we see wrong, we should take a stand. Evil thrives only when good people are silent. A man who hates opposition is a danger to all men. But the preachers and teachers of yesterday are looking the other way. If I say some pastors and priests in this land are hypocrites, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say 2 decades we've been lost and things are getting worse, I'm a wanted man. Simple truth. If I say today's school children are growing in violence, I'm a wanted man. Wanted for speaking truth, wanted for caring about the youth, wanted for wanting fairness in my land. So I'd much rather be a wanted man than take refuge in false security of a politician. Did